Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
For today's adventure, we're heading out west from international music festivals to online innovation. Today's guest has gotten really creative, and I'm excited to hear about some of the things he's done over the past couple decades in the live entertainment business. Let's welcome the CEO and co-founder at the Ticket Ferry, Ritesh Patel. Ritesh, how you doing?
How you doing, Dave? How you doing, Paul?
We're good. Tell us, for somebody who's never heard about the Ticket Ferry, what you guys are doing there.
It sounds magical because it is. How about that?
That's setting the bar high. I like it.
Appropriate with the ferry name too. That sounds magical.
So I spent a really long time being a promoter and producing, I guess, like close to 500 shows. Let's say between 400 and 500 shows, both in the UK and Australia, underground gigs of various sizes. As well as being a massive nerd and building tech my entire life. And they kind of converged because once you've thrown enough gigs, you realize that, like, okay, it's fun to start because, everyone wants to be a promoter and everyone wants to throw gigs and
Sure.
let's book some DJs and have a party. But once the business side of it comes in, you realize it's really, really difficult. Like, for your first event, your friends and family might well support it. And that kind of gives you a false sense of capability, I would say.
Yeah.
Wow, I sold out this gig. And then, reality kicks in and you lose a bunch of money on your second show. And then you're basically trying to claw your way back to break even, I would say, right? Like that's really what it comes down to.
Sure.
And then you do that for 5 years, and if you're lucky enough to survive, then you've got a business or an events business or venue that's sustainable. But it takes that long. And so there was kind of this, like, I guess, convergence moment where it felt natural to build a technology stack that would do a lot of the heavy lifting of helping events and venues actually generate revenue. And that's how the company was born.
Awesome. I mean, that sounds simple of an idea, but what's the nuts and bolts? When you're kind of fleshing that out and you're thinking, I want to make things easier.
We all like things to be easier.
Yeah, exactly. What's the approach after that? Did you kind of seed this idea and add things to it? Did you have an initial plan?
Yeah, it came from one main idea, and it was kind of one of those like light bulb moments where you're kind of like, I think I've got it. I think I found a way to close the gap between losing money on a show and at least breaking even. And which obviously that sounds magical, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the way it crystallized was, it was one of those moments where you're doing nothing and then something pushes into the gap that's in your brain.
Sure.
And what pushed into my brain was building what kind of would appear to be a ticketing platform and do everything that a ticketing platform does up until when you pay, when the fan pays for the ticket, at which point they still get charged and their ticket still gets issued, but immediately they get told that they can get back all of the money they just spent on that show. Whether it's $20, $100 or $500. And they would do that by helping to spread the word of the gig and bringing people, essentially converting people to go to the same show that they've just paid for. And we would then track that and post gig, tally that up and say, hey, you got this many people to go to the show. and you get a certain amount of money given back to you as a reward. And I was working in a couple of different ad tech companies at the time in Australia. I'd moved there from the UK a few years back, and it was like, wait, I know how ad tech works, I know how e-commerce works, I know how conversion tracking works, I know how pixels work. And this was like 2009 when there wasn't really a well understood technology, right? Especially not amongst promoters. I was like, well, if we use that same tech to essentially track every single conversion that comes from a ticket purchase, then we have a way of actually quantifying what has turned into revenue. And then we can tally it and actually push money back onto the card of the ticket buyer. And what the promoter needs is as much word of mouth as possible, because they're throwing money, and it's like what promotions like. It's like do everything and see what sticks. Like I need to do flyers, I need to do posters, I need to do word of mouth, I need to run guest lists, I need to run ads, and everything in between. And I have no idea what's going to stick. There's like this famous advertising quote, which is like 50% of my marketing works, but I don't know which 50%.
Right.
Exactly.
I always love that. Even just last week, I got an email from somebody saying, "How do you think our show's going to wrap up next month?" And it was like, if I knew that, I'd be paid a lot more money.
Yeah.
It's the spray and pray, right? You're kind of like spraying it out there and praying some of it hits the target.
And the pray is the operative word, right? It's like, I've had shows that I've produced where everyone that I knew was like, yeah, we're going. And I'd physically had 20,000 flyers handed out and like 500 posters put up around town. And then something happens and it pours down with rain, and there's like construction work near the venue, and people or the traffic jam, and now people are like, you know what, like I'm not really that bothered, I won't go. And like, okay, $20, $10, whatever, doesn't really make a difference to someone deciding not to spend it. But if you multiply by 1,000 people, then the promoter's in a really problematic situation, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I love this concept. Am I understanding it right? Where your ticket buyers, you're turning them into ambassadors for the show. Do they get? Is it one of those things where you get like a after you purchase, you get a link that you can share, send to friends, and that's kind of how it's tracked?
Yeah, exactly. And we were the first in the world to do it. So like, kind of, it is a little bit more common these days to give people a link to share after buying something. But back then, we were the first in the world to apply it to events. And there were ambassador programs back then where, if you could sign up to be an official ambassador and earn a specific amount of money per head, and then you get a bank transfer from the promoter at the end of it. But you were part of the team. You weren't a member of the public, right? And so that didn't really work very well. It wasn't very effective, because if you're earning your living is promoting gigs, you're probably promoting 10 shows at a time, right? Because you're trying to make rent. Whereas if it's a fan who has willingly spent money to go to a show, they just want their friends to go with them.
Right.
Yeah.
The bonus of getting some of the money back is great, but if anything, it's the bigger incentive is just to go and have a great experience with your friends.
Exactly. And often you'll find that there's someone in the group that discovers a really cool show, or finds an artist that they are super passionate about, and they want to recruit their friends to go, right? And think about the psychology of, let's say you see a gig you want to go to and you love the artist, but you still hold off buying a ticket because you don't have anyone to go with you and you don't want to go alone.
Right.
So if I'm friends with you and I buy my ticket and I publicly share that, or send you a text message with the link that says I'm actually committed to going, you are going to accelerate your purchase from 3 months' time. You might have decided to go to the gig, but you haven't committed yet. Now you're buying now. And then if that happens to the next person in the group, suddenly you've got this snowball effect where for each new person that commits in a group, the barrier to the next person committing is lower. And now the promoter's got this accelerated rate of sales as well as more of them.
Yeah. It makes sense.
So you have this idea, right? And you got some money from the past events, but you obviously need to get some backers involved to help launch something like this. You're not doing this all on your own. So tell me about how you kind of took it from the idea in your head and to actually launching it.
So fortunately, my business partner at the time on other ventures was my brother. So we kind of had a few things we were trying out to see what would work, and kind of like this was like hang on a second, this is not a little side project. Like Ticket Fairy is potentially an industry impacting company.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if you're helping promoters and venues to stay in business, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
I guess like how artists made money had just shifted from record sales to touring, because then streaming had come in, right? So suddenly, like, touring is everything for everyone. And so we decided to like go all in on this and bootstrap it, and basically got rejected by every investor for the next 4 years.
Doing overnight success is what you're telling me.
Yeah, this is like, I think we had the idea in 2009, put an MVP up in 2011, quit our jobs and went full time in 2013. We didn't get the first investor until 2015, so that's 6 years from conception.
Yeah.
And 4 years since launch, and everyone had two pieces of feedback. They were like, "Well, are you crazy? This is so competitive. You're never going to win." And there's just like everyone just shuts down or gets acquired, and investors lose their money. Or it's like, you've got this elaborate roadmap of all the things you're going to do to help promoters make money and actually become sustainable, and that's so difficult to build. That will cost so much money to build that we don't think that's anywhere near realistic, and so we're not going to fund you.
Right. Interesting. Well, how do you turn that around? I mean, obviously, you're going to have to get buy-in, and that is probably one of the biggest challenges, right? Is not only investment buy-in, but once you have the product, you're having to pitch promoters, you're having to pitch venues, whoever it is, you got to get that stock that you can then use to pitch the next ones and say, we've got these testimonials. How did you all kind of make that move?
So being from the UK government has this startup scheme where they'll fund you with a little bit of cash. It's like 20, 30K. And that's like kind of, it's designed to get you going. And we were really fortunate that I'm a coder, and I was able to be the coder in the company for the first 5 years and not have to have anyone external. So it was kind of like, all right, let's just like get our heads down and just build this thing. And then we were still running shows, like every couple of months. So I was like, okay, well, we're the ideal beta testers. If it goes wrong, then just log in and fix the bug and push the code.
Right.
And no one's going to notice. It's fine, right? We're not going to lose the client. So that was like that for the first year, and then the second year was like, hey, you're my buddy. Would you be willing to take a risk on this? And it kind of went from there. And then we kind of got it to the point where a couple of people in the industry took a punt, and they were like, you know what, this seems solid enough. It's very early, but seems solid enough. And we got a couple of early festival clients that were friends, and then it kind of went from there.
Yeah. That's got to be great to be able to kind of try out your own product and workshop it. And I was, it sounds to a certain extent, I was just saw Jack White at a festival this past weekend. And I was thinking about, while I was seeing him, is he, of course, has this whole business of making guitar pedals and making guitars and working with Fender. And I was like, how great is it to be Jack White, where you are playing all these instruments and you get to get your pedal that you're workshopping and throw it on a stage and try it out. And if it distorts and does something weird, no one else is going to know but you. And then you can kind of workshop it and you kind of like fix it. And then once you get it in a sweet spot, you then know you can kind of put it out there. And it sounds like, to a certain extent, that's kind of similar with you. And you're kind of trying it on your own shows. You're trying, you're having your buddies be the beta testers. And then once you kind of get that product that you feel like, okay, this is functioning, this is, for the most part, going to perform the way we need it to. That's great.
It is, but like, it means you have to do everything. Like if you're dog fooding your own, you have to be the person that tests it. Then you have to be the guys that like go and push the bug fixes. I remember I went to Burning Man, right, and in the time when there was no Starlink and there was no Wi-Fi at Burning Man,
sure,
you had to disconnect. And I got a text message made its way through saying that there was a bug in the system, and it was like affecting something major. And I'm like halfway through the week, right? So I'm not even anywhere near being able to leave. And there was like a controversial art piece, which said they'd taken a 747 Boeing, turned it into an art car and taken it to Burning Man. and I
Yeah.
managed to find the edge of the wing I got 1 bar of data reception and managed to log into the server and like edit the code. I had to like find the file that was affected and edit the code on this tiny little screen and try and not mess it up.
You're holding a piece of tinfoil in the air with one hand and typing with the other, you know.
And it's like, we're talking about a screen that is only like 40 characters wide, and you're having to like navigate all these like really long files. And I had to, if I messed up, not only would the bug not get fixed, but the entire site would have gone down.
Oh my gosh.
And I managed to deploy the fix and get it pushed. And it was like, those are the types of things that you have to do in the early days to like really
Yeah.
understand how DIY it is and how many hats you have to put on.
Yeah.
Well, now you're at a point from the guy standing on the edge of the wing with half a bar of service to you powered really tens of thousands of events around the world with Ticket Ferry, over $300 million in ticket sales. How did you get from the point where you were getting all those no's to where you are today? And do you ever sit back and be like, oh wow, are you taking it in? Are you like, this is I'm glad this is where we're going, or you still feel like I got a lot of work to do?
So much work to do. Like I said, this is to I caught up with a DJ I used to book 20 years ago today, and I was like, this is my life's work because I think that it has such a meaningful impact on creatives who are struggling to make their gigs and their venues financially sustainable, that like I have years of work still to do, right? So like the thing that was a bit of a turning point was we were at a conference and we had an exhibit, like a stand where we're exhibiting the company.
Sure.
And this, you could book a founder's advice session, right? It was a tech conference.
Yeah.
And managed to get into a session with Justin Can, who was the founder of Twitch.
Yeah.
And we just signed our first festival client. It was just still me and my brother. And it was like, and I kind of sat with him one-on-one and I was like, we're at a point where we've now just sold the first $1 million worth of tickets. Like this week, we've crossed $1 million in ticket sales, which took years to get to.
Right.
And now we've just signed a client that's going to give us a 30,000 cap festival. And how the hell do we support that? Like, how do we handle the customer service? How do we handle all that coming in and then manage the door for the gates for 30,000 people? And make sure like the check-in technology is solid enough and whatever. And like, we need to raise some money. And he was kind of like, this is interesting. I've just sold Twitch to Amazon. Like, let's have lunch. And like, I'm actually interested in investing. And then the next day we did a little product demo and he brought a friend of his with him. And we ended the conversation and he was like, okay, send me a deck and I can like round up about like, 300, 400K between myself and my friends. And, like we can put a little funding round together. And we spent 4 years being rejected by every investor possible, right? So we kind of like conditioned ourselves that if an investor didn't say that, it was a polite no.
Right.
So he didn't explicitly say, yes, I'm writing you a check. I kind of ghosted him and didn't send him the deck.
Right. You're just like, that was nice of him to hear me out.
Yeah. and then 4 months later, I randomly ended up in San Francisco. And the night before I was leaving, I remembered that he existed and I emailed him. I was like, hey, I'm in town. Do you want to catch up? And he was like, cool, let's get a coffee tomorrow. And he goes, I'll bring my assistant. And the first thing he said to me when we sat down was, why didn't you take my money a few months ago? And I was like, well, you didn't say yes. So obviously I didn't. And he was like, fine, I'll write you a check today. Stay in town for a couple of weeks. We'll do you around. And then we ended up doing like just under $500,000 in the first round. And it was like 3 of the founders of Twitch, Steve Huffman, who's the CEO of Reddit, Daniel Gross, who's the head of AI at Apple, Amit Mahajan, who just created Farmville, and Steve Huffman, CEO of Reddit. And so like there was like some these like rock stars, right? And then off the back of that, we got into the Y Combinator program that incubated like Airbnb and Dropbox and all these big companies, and it kind of went from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously a huge undertaking, and then you, as you said, you're still working, and you've still got a lot to do. One of the biggest challenges that I know, and anybody in ticketing deals with is ticket scalping and resale fraud. How are you guys looking at that?
We actually worked really closely with a very early festival client that was starting to sell out within days or weeks when we first brought them on. And this was like 2014. And they knew they were going to have a real problem with scalping. And so I flew to see them in Berlin. and we sat down together and spec'd out like what protection for that might look like. And we'd already basically built the platform in a way where if you said you were buying 5 tickets, you were able to name 5 tickets. And we basically made it compulsory so that you had to name every ticket. And then you were able to do a peer-to-peer sale or a sale to waitlist self-service within the platform. And we launched that in 2014. We were one of the first inbuilt closed-loop resale platforms in the industry. And then the event would be able to enforce photo ID against name on ticket, but you can still transfer it in the system and move ownership. So that's how we dealt with that.
Have you seen, sometimes with those systems, you build a better mousetrap, you get a smarter mouse. Have you seen challenges that continue to challenge you all, or have you felt like you have enough control over kind of your platform and obviously have a knowledge for coding that you can kind of set that barrier up early and kind of fight that?
It's really difficult to get around. If the promoter wants to enforce a name on the ticket, it's really difficult to get around because otherwise, the only way to transfer it is through the system. The person who's buying the ticket has to pay on the site. The person who's selling gets refunded through the site. There's no money. And if someone wants to, and you can only sell at face value. So if someone wants to charge you more, they have to do it through the system and then trust that you're going to send them a bank transfer for the upside, which you're not going to do.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Right. And if the bots are trying to buy 200 tickets at once and they have to name every single one, and then they have to use that system to transfer it, they can't do that anymore.
Right. And too much effort for them, right? They're just going to be like, this isn't worth it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what we found then is that even in when we've launched in markets that we've never operated in before, if the event clearly says this is the resale policy and this is how you do it, the community starts self-regulating. It's really funny. Someone will post in a group and say, they've got a ticket to sell, and the group will tag them and go, oh, this looks fake. You have to sell through Ticket Fairy through the official channel. Or someone will say they're looking for a VIP or a 3-day pass or whatever, and they'll qualify in their post. We'll only buy through Ticket Fairy resale.
Right.
And then if someone's tried to be sketchy, they'll get tagged and removed from the group by the community, and it's self-regulating. It's really interesting seeing it happen.
Yeah, that is interesting. Huh.
So, you're obviously a data guy. You get this data stuff, but I'm sure you work with people who don't understand it. How are you working with, so if somebody's listening today and they're like, oh, we have a festival, this could be something that's interesting. First of all, do you do one-off things? And obviously with data, there's so much interesting data, but it feels like there's not always a lot of actionable data. So how are you helping people who are already overworked kind of get to that point, and what's available for somebody who might be interested?
So we love doing one-off festivals and one-off events all the time because, at the end of the day, if you are betting everything on one weekend, if you're not like a venue, you can spread your bets a little bit. Like a show goes badly one weekend, it's okay. You can make it up on the next weekend, right?
Sure.
Or maybe you've got 3 shows in a week. But if you're betting the house on one festival that takes place on one weekend, and if it doesn't go well, you lose your actual house.
Right.
They're the people I want to help. So, we built a lot of tools that, even that earn your money back flow that we first launched with, I've seen it bring in $1 million for a festival.
Yeah.
Because it accelerated their sellout. It allowed them to expand capacity. It gave them such a high ROI on that they had way more budget to execute other things. And, we've got loads of case studies where 15, 20, 25% of the sales have come from the fans actually spreading the word. And that's a really big deal. And then when you think about the core team of a venue or a promoter, really they can only really afford 1 or 2 people full time on actual salary. And then everyone else is freelance or agencies that are on fractional hours, or, you bring people in 2 weeks before the gig or the weekend of the show. But actual people on salary is really only 1 or 2 people, right? And so a promoter doesn't have a budget to have an in-house engineering, a developer team or a data scientist. They just don't have that. So we kind of go in and go, what's every tiny piece of data that you could possibly exist through ads and conversions and checkout process and first party information about the buyers and loyalty and repeat attendance and everything in between. And let's do that data crunching for them and visualize it in a way that's really easy to interpret, like an infographic. And then they can chop in data as they need to. Like, and then like little things like every table in the dashboard has a little copy icon and it puts the data straight into your clipboard and it auto pastes into Google Sheets or Excel if you're a numbers nerd, right? You can do that. And so, you know, if you can employ best practices that you know work and then provide those in the platform for people that do not have the time or resources to be able to execute those, like that's really the way we thought about it.
All right, so obviously you're very comfortable talking about this stuff, but let's take you back. It's 1998. You're in the UK. You're at the University of Bristol. What are you thinking you're going to do with your life?
So I thought, okay, this is the thing, right? Like before going to university, like everyone just as you're leaving high school, everyone's like, okay, what's everyone going to end up doing for the rest of their life?
Right.
And I was the nerd. I'd been building software since I was 13 in my high school. They already adopted 2 pieces of tech that I'd written and were using it at my high school, right? So everyone's like, oh, he's going to be the next Bill Gates. Cool. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm okay with that. So get to Bristol for a computer science degree, discover the rave scene, completely almost throw my degree out of the window and flip my my hours to nocturnal and start just like being in the rave scene and throwing. And I thought that I was going to be this like tech entrepreneur. Then I was like, no, I'm going to be a promoter. And then suddenly 10 years later, now I'm both. And it's really weird, but it's quite nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from having that moment where you realize you want to do it, did you start doing, tell me about, you talked about that first show that was so easy to do, right? What was your first show?
It was, I was 20. I think I booked it when I was 19 with a roommate that was in the same house as me, who happened to have turntables and a sound system. And I discovered the rave scene partly through it. And we found a venue that was willing to give us a Saturday night. So I called the only real major agency I knew and was like, I want to book your 4 biggest artists. And they were like, you're nuts. I was like, if it's okay, we'll do it anyway. We announced the gig only 3 weeks beforehand, and everyone thought we were absolutely crazy. And it was like one of the biggest lineups in Bristol that had ever been announced. And I found a way to live stream it over dial-up in January 2000. So that was quite nice as an achievement.
Yeah.
And then we filled the club in the first 45 minutes, and it was a real buzz.
That's amazing. And is that, I mean, obviously you were already kind of in that scene and probably had that love of music and had that, infection of kind of being like, this is probably the industry I'm going to work in or be in for the rest of my life. But like, is that first show, I'm sure was like a huge, like, whoa, this is it. This is the moment.
Yeah. And you know what, like I revived that brand about 4 years ago and have turned it into a festival. And I showed someone the very first flyer from 2000 the other day, and it's the same branding, it's the same logo, it's the same font. My phone number is still the same. The website is still the same. It's like 25 years later.
Yeah.
This is we're talking about Locust Drum and Bass.
Correct.
So
yes.
tell me what this is today.
So very underground UK-based music festival. We launched Ticket Ferry in Mexico in Tulum during lockdown in early 2021. And then having deployed the platform into Mexico, I kind of got the itch to start throwing shows again, because once you've done it once, you always want to do it again. It's just the way it goes, right? It's like, so let me take another risk. It's like, it's addictive because if it works, great.
It's gambling. It's basically gambling.
It's basically gambling. And we did it a little bit in 2018 and 2019. We did these like Ticket Ferry after hours at South by Southwest in Austin.
Oh, yeah.
And did like, when the conference would finish at 2 a.m, the Ticket Ferry after hours would start in a weird random venue in the middle of nowhere, then go till like 6 a.m. So like I kind of got for doing it a little bit then. And then suddenly there's an opportunity to run an international DJ festival in a luxury beach club in Tulum. I mean, why wouldn't I do it, right? Like, so that kind of brought that back. And then a couple of years later, got asked to go to Bali for a ticket ferry meeting and talking to this new city that's just been built. It's like a 44-hectare, $100 million development, and they're building 9 venues. And as part of that, we started talking about the festival in Mexico, and they were like, you know what? There's a market for this in this part of the world. We should do that here as well. So it kind of now it's become multi-region, and it's really interesting to kind of be doing that and then feeding all the learnings of doing something so complex, like, flying 80 artists in to an island. Essentially, Bali's an island. Tulum is like, it might as well be an island. It's coastal Mexico,
Right.
and thinking logistics of that, and even just finding the requirements for the tech riders for the artists. Like, it's really different.
Yeah.
But the festival has got a really good reputation. Had a 20-piece orchestra this year in Bali, which was great. And then everything that is being learned from doing all of that process, like artists advancing and all the kind of manual work, is being fed into Ticket Fairy as like process improvements.
Yeah.
Do you see that kind of as a side hustle, or do you see that as just like when you're doing for fun? I know it's a lot of work, right? We all know how much putting on a festival, how much work it is. But is it something that you just kind of like, Ticket Fairy is your main focus, or how you balancing your time?
So when I started throwing shows, my big thing, so the events back in Bristol were called Locus as well. My big thing was, how do I bring new talent to town and expose people that really deserve exposure because they're releasing really good music, or their performances are incredible, and they're the ones you always lose money on, but you don't care because you brought someone who's just cutting edge to town.
Sure.
And sometimes you can put them on a support for a bigger act and make it worthwhile, and make it feasible. And so that's always been the mission, right? Is like expose really and curate really good music. And so it's the same with the festival. Like, it's got a reputation at the moment for being super purist, really intentional, not selling out in terms of like, just booking the easy wins of who sells tickets. And so like, it's still a really creative passion thing for me, right? Like, I really believe that bringing good music to a new audience is super important. So that hasn't changed. But what's really nice is that like it now is going hand in hand with the mission of the tech company and Ticket Fairy, which is like, well, everything is again dog fooding, right? Now I'm dog fooding my festival into event management tools and things like that. So it's exactly the same process as when we first started.
Yeah. I mean, they're both very passion projects, but it's got to be kind of fun to think back, through this gap of this, span of making that first show to now having these festivals, and really understanding some things never change and some things have changed dramatically.
100%.
And is that kind of a fun perspective to sort of look at, like, here's how the industry has changed, and certainly you've played a part in it to some degree with with Ticket Fairy of kind of forcing that evolution and helping it in many good ways. But are you able to sort of take a step back and sort of enjoy that that path, that full path?
Every so often you get to enjoy it when you're not working a 20-hour day.
Right.
But honestly, it's really nice because, like, okay, so the guy I had brunch earlier with, a DJ I used to book 20 years ago, and we were talking about the differences between now and then. And back then, as the promoter of the gig, you would pick your headliner, you would pick your support acts, you were able to present your show in the way that you wanted to. Fast forward 5 years, and now the agencies control billing, the management controls everything that happens before they'll approve a gig. You don't get to pick where an artist goes on a flyer, and you're kind of beholden to these kind of corporate rules, right? And so when I brought the brand back in 2022 and started throwing gigs again, I had real issues with that, where people were like, well, no, this is not how it works. You don't get to pick what the billing is for the talent. I was like, well, and then it happened where 2 agents I was booking talent through fought for a month on which artist would go above the other. And it delayed my announcement by a month and a half. And I was like, I just lost a lot of money because you guys couldn't figure your shit out.
Right.
So then I had to be like, all right, no more. This is not the way it gets done. So then the next four festivals, it's kind of like, no, I pick, because like essentially the risk is taken on by the promoter.
Sure.
So if they know their audience and they know their product and they know how to present their gig to their audience in a way that it's going to resonate, how do you know better as a manager or an agent? You absolutely do not.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's more of like to your point, if you bill it incorrectly, you're the one that is going to suffer. So it's if you feel like you're catching someone on the rise, and I mean, you should have the ability to kind of make some of those executive decisions, because you're the one putting the risk forward.
Right. And then the thing is that, often the compromise is we'll bill people alphabetically. And we'll do, like
Right.
8% billing. And then if you do that, the person that might have sold the most tickets is 20 names down. And
Right.
whoever sees the flyer for 2 seconds on social media never even gets that far, and they just scroll past it, right?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh no, that's just cost money, not even made money.
Right.
You've just like lost the impact of the artwork.
Yep. Do you see this growing to other cities, or are you kind of like, oh, two is a fun little
Two
side
festivals is
things?
plenty. Two festivals
Yeah,
is plenty.
yeah, I would imagine.
It's
Yeah,
fine. And like, we're launching Ticket Fairy in so many new markets and growing the company very significantly at the moment. And it's like, well, the creative side of things is great, and it really does feed into the product. But at the end of the day, like, you don't need to throw more than two festivals a year. Like, it's just way over the top.
sure, sure.
Well, obviously, we've talked a lot about your ventures and things that are keeping you busy. But when you're not working, what are you doing for fun these days?
Sleeping, dude.
The older you get, the more you enjoy a good nap. I get it.
um, I think that it's like it's also, I think, a real ADHD trait where like you go out Monday to Friday and then, or Monday to Thursday, it's like, right, I'm sleeping at the weekend. I used to do that all the time. Where it's like the most. I think one of the things I really believe still is that people who are out on a Tuesday night are the most fun because they genuinely want to be out. They're not just trying to escape their 9 to 5.
Sure.
So let's do that. Let's go out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and have the most fun. And then, have a chill weekend.
I like
I
it.
love that. Yeah, I love that.
What you like to travel? What do you like to do when you do have the free time that you're not sleeping?
Honestly, even though we're 15 years into the company now, since launch, so like more since conception, I don't get to do personal travel still.
Wow. Okay.
Everything has to be weaved around a reason to travel for business. And then, yeah, a few days either side, you get to do something that's a bit fun. But like my travel still revolves around which client event do I need to be at, which conference do I need to be at, which festival do I need to be at, and then everything either side is like kind of a nice to have. Like the company takes over your life when you do something that's a real passion thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I love getting to talk to you about what you're doing here. And before we wrap things up here today, I want to hit you with our Fast Five. It's just five quick questions, looking for your short, immediate response. First up, what was your very first concert?
First one I went to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one I can remember is a band called Faithless, and they were like very early in like electronic music in the mid 90s.
Do you have an all-time favorite concert?
Probably that, to be honest.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Peaking early. What you mentioned.
Oh wait, no, maybe Sade. I saw Sade in Sydney.
Oh,
Sade.
so
So
good.
many people have brought up Sade on this. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the underground music there in Bristol. Give us one artist to check out on Spotify.
Oh, Galaxy, GLXY.
All right, there we go.
Perfect.
What do you miss most about living in the UK?
Um, so I don't spend that much time in the UK anymore, but every time I come back, I really miss how laid back the culture is.
Yeah.
Like pub culture is like, you're just hanging out, and it's not the same as bar culture. Pub culture and bar culture are very different.
Sure.
Like pub culture is like you're in your living room and you're sitting around a table talking to your friends about life and you happen to have a drink with you. Whereas bar culture is very much like you go to the bar to drink.
Yeah, sure. Last question for you. What's your theme song? So there's the TV show where reality cameras follow you around with everything you're doing. What's the song that plays over the opening credits of the Ritesh show?
Ooh, even Gwen Stefani, Let Me Blow Your Mind.
I love it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
On that note, we'll wrap things up. But before we let you go, throw out any plugs. If somebody wants to reach out to you to learn more or follow along with what you're doing there, or learn about Ticket Fairy, any of the above, anything you want to plug, throw it out
Super
here.
easy to find. By the way, Ticket Fairy comes from the fact that like the Tooth Fairy gave you money when you were a kid, and we give that to you as fans for sharing shows. So like it's kind of like quite linked conceptually. So yeah, Ticket Fairy on most socials. Rit Locus, RITLOCUS for my personals. Feel free to ask questions and even if like I don't need you to be a client to help. So just like, if there's stuff that you're trying to solve and maybe my experience is relevant, then super happy to help.
That's great. Hey, I really appreciate the time today. It was really, really interesting hearing about your adventures.
Thanks so much.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews because it helps other folks find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.